Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are listening to this. And that's the wonderful thing about podcasts, isn't it? For me, I love listening to them in the gym. So it depends what time I'm there. Wherever you are in the UK or the world, if you're listening from abroad, a big welcome to you and welcome to Behind the Briefcase. So this is a podcast that we created very much to look at leadership roles, very much to look at CEOs, people that have had what you may determine as success in life, and go behind the scenes to find out what made that person, how did they get to where they are today, and is there any systematic patterns that emerge within these different people that will help you on your journey to where you want to get to. So I'm delighted today to actually welcome Mike Cleasby. Now, Mike is the Chief Quality and Risk Officer for the National Care Group. I also get him to explain what the role of Chief Quality and Risk Officer is, because myself, as a CEO of many companies, hears the word risk officer and think, oh, they would stop me doing absolutely everything that I want to do. So you may be thinking the same thing. So it'd be good to get a clear point on that. I certainly need some risk officers in my life. I would say the wife could possibly become very close to that and probably fits the job description. But yeah, so for the next hour, we're going to sit back, we're going to ask a few questions, we're going to get to know the person, and we're going to find out their journey in life. And whether you're in the gym or having a cup of coffee or doing some work at the emails and we're on in the background, let's have a listen to Mike Cleasby. So Mike, for us, it's actually afternoon. So good afternoon and thank you for coming on. So Mike, just give the audience, who are you and what role do you currently do?
Well, as you said, I'm Mike Cleasby. I'm the Chief Quality and Risk Officer for National Care Group. We provide a range of residential, supported living, day services for people who've got a learning disability, autism, mental health, acquired brain injury, older people. We've got services right across England and in Wales. We're certainly not the biggest. There are people a lot bigger than National Care Group, but our ethos is about getting the quality right for the people we support, and I think that's one of the reasons why National Care Group brought me on board 6 years ago now.
I mean, we'll delve more into that as we go along. Just explain to me then, and the people listening, Chief Quality and Risk Officer. I know there's going to be a lot that goes into that, and you probably won't want to detail the entire job description, but in a summary or in a nutshell, what is that role?
There's lots of strings to it, really. Part of it is around ensuring that all of our services are compliant with 3 regulators. So that's the Care Quality Commission, Care Inspectorate Wales and Ofsted. So that's supporting registered managers, senior managers, support colleagues, external stakeholders. So there's a key bit there around ensuring that we are regulatory compliant, and then just as important, if not more important, it's about ensuring that we are providing high quality services for the people we support to help them live their best lives ever. Then parts of it also, I report into the CEO, so I make him aware of any risks, report risks. We've got a number of electronic systems around medication, care plans, governance, etc. So I'm his sort of eyes and ears and his sort of risk barometer, really. Yeah, it's quite varied, from ensuring that we involve people we support in interviews, in recruitment, in running the service, to the health and safety, the compliance. On Monday, I was putting fence posts in a service, so you can't get much more varied than that. And I've got the blisters to prove it, really.
So just because you got the title chief doesn't mean that you're not still the actual labourer when need be.
Oh, God, no. I mean, I would never ask a support colleague or anybody to do a job that I wouldn't do myself. And I think that's been my sort of mantra, really, since I started off in care, really. Yeah, I certainly haven't got a flash car. I do about 20,000 miles a year, really. So, like, I'm away quite often, 3-4 nights a week, up and down the country in services. So, yeah, it's certainly varied, but I wouldn't ask anybody to do a job that I haven't done myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely share that background, and I think that comes from something we both share very similar of, and that is particularly within social care. We both went in and started at the real grass levels of care. So I know when I was looking back through your information, where you're looking at sort of like 29, 30 years of experience, you actually started off on the front line as a care worker, support worker role.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I was adding up the years. It actually goes back 36 years now. I know I don't look it, but 36 years in care. And I think when I was leaving school, I think my involvement with the community and supporting people probably started when I was 5 years old. So I was in the Boys Brigade for 20 odd years, and I think that gave me quite a good footing. Then I did community service for my Queen's Award. So I started off every Sunday volunteering in an older person service, and I really liked it. I've cared for sick family members, really, who've sort of died, really, whether that be grandparents and parents now. So I think I always knew that I wanted to work with people. I was undecided at the time whether or not I was going to go into care, I was going to join the police, which I'd volunteer at, or did volunteer at, or whether I was going to jump on a boat and join the Navy, really. So I've always been a people person. But yeah, I started off as a support worker initially in older person services within the Northeast, but then I did learning disability, I did day services, I got my first management position in a day service and then moved to a residential service. So I've done the night shifts, I've done the 25 hours in a residential service because you're doing a sleepover. I've supported people on holiday. I think that gives you the footing, the grounding, the right character, the right values. And even all these years later, I think that sort of early approach, and then obviously I went to college and did various qualifications in care and project management. But I think that footing, that foundation, and it's about treating people how you'd want to be treated yourself or a loved one to be treated. And I think that worked, but we may touch on it later. I also had some extremely good mentors at an early age who maybe there was more time then because funding was easier then. They took the time to mentor me, nurture me, spend the time. They were you could make mistakes as long as nobody got harmed. I do think that made a massive difference, really.
I think that's a great point, Mike, because similar to you, so at the age of 17, I started off as a care worker, and very similar, sort of went on to become a deputy manager, then a manager, and still at a very quite young age. I mean, I think I managed my first service when I was 19, so it was very much quite a quick process through the ranks, if you like. But I go back to the point you just made there, and I don't want to shoot myself in the foot because obviously I'm the CEO of a national training company as well. There was really not much training around when I first started in care. I'm of the age where it was the VHS video, and there may have been a moving and handling video that you watched where it was either a big tick that was coming up or an X, and that was how you done it. But what I do remember is everything I learned in those first few years was learned from experienced people working within the service who may not have seen themselves as mentors, but actually were mentors, helped and they guided you. And when district nurses came in, they would explain what they were doing and show you the reasons why. And doctors, when they came in, would talk you through what their thought process was. And you were involved in it all, and you had this huge learning experience that was going on all the time as you were working. And I don't know whether we have shifted to a point where it's all become about the certificate now and not the person. I think mentoring in those days, you're right, it could have been that there was more time. But it's almost like from a compliance perspective, the certificate holds more value than the individual work experience that you're gaining there and the people around you.
I started my working career with a local authority, and their training was face-to-face, very robust. Right. So I certainly can't complain from that point of view. We're obviously going back a significant time when the funding pressures on local authority wasn't there. Probably the regulatory pressure wasn't there either. But for whatever reason, I mean, I can think of 3 managers now, all female coincidentally, who had various senior positions within social care, who absolutely took the time, and I'm still in touch with many of them today, but absolutely took the time to nurture, mentor me, get me on the right path.
I'm going to bring this back to the individual because there was a lot of people started the same time as I did within care who I know currently are still working at the same level in the same role. Yeah. Now, I'm not here to diminish them, but is it that actually, because I found this a pattern in my life, is it that there was just something about, let's say, us, that made you want to seek out that learning, that made you want to seek out that mentor, that meant that you naturally became someone that networked and led in communication?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time when I first started off in care, I didn't really have any vision of wanting to progress. It just naturally happened by people seeing something in me, giving me the opportunity, obviously seeing me being values driven, wanting the best for people we support, those skills around engaging with families, local authorities, etc. And then that helped. And I suppose when I got my first management position, whether that be day services or residential, that's when you probably think to yourself, oh, I'm quite good at this. I can do this. What next? It's about having that confidence. I mean, when I was a child, I had a severe speech impediment. And whether that was down to nerves, whether it was down to lack of confidence in my own ability, judging yourself. I mean, I've got a brother who's a barrister and the other one who signs off helicopters for a big national company, and he lives in Japan. Whether or not there was some self-doubt there initially around, actually, I'm not as good as them, where am I at? But as my confidence grew, I undertook more qualifications, networked more. You actually think, do you know what? I'm quite good at this.
Where did the speech impediment hinder you through school?
Yeah, quite possibly, I would think. But I think when I was in certainly secondary school, unless you're a real high flyer, and I don't mind admitting I was sort of a late developer. I did most of my qualifications after I left school. They weren't really bothered. I mean, I was one of three brothers, and as my older brother, academically very clever, as a barrister, he was seen as a shining light. I think if you weren't in the upper echelons of being clever in my day at school, they weren't really bothered about you. It wasn't until I went to college and people started treating you as an adult that actually they took the time in different learning styles. Not everyone's great at exams. Some people, it might be an MVQ or another way of getting the qualifications, and you get to the same result, but it's through the hard work and sort of perseverance and finding the people to get that positive feedback off people. Really, I would suggest finding the people to network with, because I think initially it was quite a difficult, lonely road where you do doubt yourself. Can I do this? What am I going to do? How am I going to buy a house, a car, that sort of thing, really? And but I think it's definitely hard work, putting the hours in, not being afraid to roll your sleeves up and show how committed you are and get to where you want to be. And I think to your point, some of my colleagues who I worked with back in the day are still either support colleagues or first line managers, but that's what they're comfortable doing. I've not been afraid to, so I think I worked for 4 local authorities and then I've worked for 3 national care providers. I've not been afraid to move on. I mean, don't get me wrong, I worked everywhere at least a couple of years, got my ground in, but when the right opportunities come along, I've not been afraid to move on and think, do you know what, that seems right, let's go for it.
Yeah, and no, I was talking to someone else about this, about what makes some of us different in the world of management, leadership, or founders of businesses. And we were kind of like, a lot of people want to turn around and use the word luck. And yes, there is an element of luck that can happen, but you've got to put yourself in a position to see the luck. And I think opportunity is more of a relevant word. I think opportunities present themselves to us all the time. But unless you put yourself in a position where you feel, I'm going to do this, I'm going to have a go at this, I'm going to make that leap. And that comes with confidence that's been built up, experience, knowledge, understanding, beliefs, values, as you said, to do that. So that hard work will pay off at some point, as long as you take the opportunity when it occurs.
I don't think it's luck at all, to be honest with you. I think we are in control of our own destiny, even if you've had the hardest path, whether it be hard work, whether that be in social care or the retail sector, or you join the armed forces. I think we're all in control of our own destiny, and we might have the odd hurdle to overcome, or it might not work out. One role might not work out. You might work for somebody whose values aren't aligned to your own and you need to move on. I can remember when I worked for a local authority, I worked closely with the director of social services, and in that day, like, oh my God, I'm sat in a meeting here with the director of social services, but he saw the faith in me. I won an award in Darlington for my partnership working, for what I did for people with disabilities there. And that's purely down to having some good mentors, getting that good feedback, but also hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the word hard work is going to get repeated a number of times, because no matter which level you get to, it's hard work. You're just taking it up a level. But in terms of one thing you mentioned before, and you've said the word a couple of times, and that's values driven. I think this sort of like is a makeup. First of all, what are your key core values that make up Mike, and how have they driven you in making key decisions in your life?
I always like to treat people how I expect to be treated myself, and vice versa. I expect the same sort of values from them. Yes, I'm caring, I'm person centered, I'm passionate, I'm motivated. I want to do the right thing for the people we support, and I think that's always been in there. I can think back to my first role in a residential service where I was supporting people with a learning disability to take positive risks. I took somebody to Scarborough. They'd never had a hot curry before, but they fancied one. They'd never been on a roller coaster. It's thinking about. I was welling up a bit then. I'm getting a bit passionate about it. So it's thinking about the life experiences that some people in care might not have ever had, and that lived with me till the day I die. The fact that I supported some people to achieve their first time of trying something. Now, we talk in social care about positive risk taking. I don't think we do that sort of enough, really. We're very much wrapped in regulation, or we can't do that, they're in care. But I want to empower my colleagues to positive risk take with people we support. Why can't they go on holiday to America, or go on a roller coaster, or learn to drive? They can do everything you and I can do, most people, with the right sort of support, really. And sometimes we need to keep people safe, but that needs to be appropriately sort of risk assessed. So my values are very outcomes driven. I've also got a 22-year-old daughter who's got a learning disability and autism. That's my benchmark when I go into any service, or I've gone into any service, certainly for the last 23 years, sorry. I talk about the Ellie test, and if it's not good enough for my daughter Ellie, it's not good enough for the people we support either, really. I mean, CQC refer it to as the mum test, but within National Care Group, I talk about the Ellie test, really, and that's about outcomes, it's about environments, it's about quality of life and opportunities, really. So that's very much in my heart as well.
So Ellie's obviously been a driving force for you, because you're able to sort of look at other people, like you said, in the Ellie test, would I want this for my daughter? I guess that then allows you to really align with the job that you do, because you have this both in your personal and your professional life, and ultimately that key value of wanting to make a significant difference. I think it's not just about making a difference, it's a significant difference is what keeps you driving within the industry.
I think it helps relate to people we support. My daughter Ellie actually does sign language training and is a quality checker for National Care Group. She's also a Special Olympian. She can swim far better than me. She can swim, she trampolines, she's a gymnast coach. She volunteers in a food bank. She gives so much back to her local community. When I'm relating to family carers at National Care Group, they can see that I've got that empathy. I know what they've gone through. Caring's a 24/7 job. Even if their loved one is in supported or residential care, they never stop caring. They never stop worrying. So yeah, that's absolutely played a big part in my life.
And it's sort of like one of those things that will always keep you going. It will always get you out of bed in the morning to make the difference.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of doubt. Mike, I want to take us back a bit. When I decided at 17 that I was going to work in care, which, to be fair, wasn't through choice. It wasn't a choice of mine. My mum sort of made me get a job, and that was the job available. I kind of when I went into it, there was very few men within the industry. In fact, I stuck out like a sore thumb at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if you felt that as a male, but it was never pushed upon males to go into that industry. It was a female industry.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, really. I think I'm certainly thinking back to my early experiences. Certainly in support worker roles, there was very few men. Clearly, as you got further up the managerial ladder, I can think about lots of male managers, but certainly at support level within the older person service and the learning disability services, very, very few men. Quite often I'd be the only male on sort of shift, really. So yeah, I think it's certainly changed a lot more recently. But you are right, going back all those years, it was a very female dominated sort of career, really, and not necessarily frowned upon, but certainly when you were in the pub and speak to people and they say, "Oh, what do you do?" You're a male working in social care. You do personal care.
Yeah, it was, and that's the point I was going to make. So it's not when I first started in care, it wasn't that you were sort of victimized or harassed in any way for being a male. There was certainly some labels that got placed upon you, which you would sort of like say, no, that's not true. The amount of times I got asked if I was gay when I wasn't, people's sort of like stereotypical, why would a male want to work in that industry?
Yeah.
But I remember having to wear a white tunic, and I remember in those days that people were happy. Infection prevention control wasn't the big thing, so people were happy to come in and out of work wearing the workwear. And I remember people saying to me sometimes, seeing a white overall, what do you work as? And I would turn around and say a dentist because I didn't want to say. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds mad now looking back, but at the time it was like save face. You're a teenager, you're a young man, and you're working in care. But as you say, it's changed. And we've seen a significant change over the years. And I think it's fantastic because I think males do bring, males were never seen as nurturers. If you think of from a behaviorist world that we all grew up in, but actually some male carers out there are phenomenal in the job role that they do.
I can think about my very first role in care, and I was obviously a young boy, probably not even a man at that time, supporting elderly people in the 70s, 80s, 90s plus. I think they loved my approach with them, but it must have been quite interesting from their point of view. This young whippersnapper supporting men in the 70s, 80s, 90s to shave and sort of doing the personal care and sort of that side of it, really. But I was fortunate to have some probably older, mature ladies who were probably coming to the end of their working career, who nurtured, supported me, showed me how it was done, and I think some of them actually enjoyed having a meal around, really. Different banter, different, maybe a different sort of approach. So, yeah, there were certainly more males when I worked in day services than there was in particularly elderly residential care. There was virtually none. I think there was more males in the learning disability autism services that I worked at, but certainly working with older people, very few men.
Yeah, because it goes back to, if I was to flip that back round, one of the things that always surprised me was the amount of females that worked within the industry compared to the amount of males. But when you looked at the higher level, there was certainly glass ceilings there for the females that they couldn't get, which was madness, really. When they made up, maybe I'm making a figure up here, but let's say they made up 98% of the workforces within the UK. And yeah, if you looked at it from a management perspective or even higher in a directorship role, they'd probably be lucky if that 98% made up 10% within that area. So I'm always really proud now when I see them glass ceilings being broken through, and you come across female leaders within social care, because ultimately they make up the majority of that gender that's working within the industry.
I'm thinking about our current exec team, and we've got 4 males and 2 females, and the females are quite formidable, really experienced, top of the game. They certainly deserve to be sort of where they are, really, and they're absolutely leaders in their class, really. So, but I think certainly times have changed. I can certainly think back to the first directors of social services in the early days. The vast majority were male. I did work with a couple of female directors of social services in the South Tyneside area, Sunderland area, but yeah, that was quite rare.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, right. So let's just try and put this graph together. So you've had your schooling years. Your brother is a very academic person. He's off shining his light, and now I'd have loved to have been a barrister. I think I just something about it makes me think I'd love to do that job. Maybe I'm argumentative. That's it. But you've got your brother doing this. Your other brother's gone off to Japan and signing off helicopters. You've taken on the role in care, and you're starting to progress up through the role in care against that adversity of speech impediment. You found a way in. You found people to mentor and nurture you. You get offered the role in management, and you take on that leadership role. So at that point of leadership, and I think this would be good for young managers that are taking on a role in services. If you were looking at your management style now compared to your management style then, What would you say you've improved in as a person over the years in the different roles as you've climbed the ladder?
Certainly, my communication skills have improved. I'm a lot better at sort of thinking through the strategy side of it. How I respond to certainly difficult conversations has changed over the years. I think that's probably the main elements of it, really, around because that strong work ethic's always been there. I'm generally first in the door and often last out the door. So that work, which is some of it's unpaid, obviously, although I am on a decent salary now. But so that work ethic's never changed. I think the training is absolutely important, and networking is. I think networking now is a lot easier than it was back in the day because now of social media, podcasts, TikTok, those sorts of things. It's far easier to join a network and WhatsApp. I'm on a number of groups now, but I think going back to my first managerial course, you had to make your own networks, and if you didn't know something, have the confidence to sort of ask, or would you mind showing me that again, really? But it's also developing those either online networks or linking in with other managers around, this is how I do it, how do you do it? So it's having the confidence to sort of talk and share ideas through, really. So yeah, I think that's probably it, really. I do think coming from the local authority background initially helped me within now working for private sector providers. I do think the work ethic within the local authority, getting that right, my commitment, doing the long hours, the change I made, very much helped me working now for us, working within the private sector.
That's interesting. That I've never worked within the local authority. I lie. For my sins, I became an elected borough councillor for 4 years, so I do know how the local authority system works, but I've never worked directly with it. You say that was really a good learning, platform for you to take over into the private sector. So, what was it about the local authority? Was it that it was almost non-for-profit type scenario that you had the ability and time, or was it just the different experiences that you got from it?
I worked my way up in through support colleague to deputy manager. Then I managed day services, residential services. That was in the Cleveland area, and then I went to Sunderland and managed some day services there. And again, I think a number of those local authority leaders were really inspirational. Then I moved to a valuing people role, which was sort of the policy role back in the day around improving lives of people with a learning disability. So that was a government agenda around sort of embedding that. And that gave me like a real target action plan to do. I was responsible for it. I worked in 3 local authorities sort of on that, really, and that sort of really helped because you were able to see we had a bit more money than probably what they've got now. So I can think of examples in Sunderland where I helped set up a sensory hydrotherapy pool that the community used. So, and that legacy was there long after I left. We set up a social enterprise in a cafeteria in Sunderland, which had a cafe downstairs and an art gallery upstairs. We sold organic fruit and veg. So I think in that time, local authorities had the money to be able to think, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good community initiative. We'll support that. So but clearly you had to jump through a million hoops. You being a councillor, we had to go for various funding committees within Sunderland and say, I've got this bid, this is what I want to do. But there was funding streams there to be able to do that, really. Yeah. And I think that was quite impactful around the people. You surround yourself with good people, but also challenging bad practice. So I think I worked for 4 local. I think the last local authority I worked for was Darlington, which was initially the valuing people role. Then as sort of the government puts kicked in, that role sort of slipped away. And then I worked for the council transformation team, looking at efficiencies right across the council. And unfortunately, we had to make some people redundant and make some difficult decisions. And then after 22 years, I'm going to say, local authority service, I was able to partly make myself redundant, and that was my exit into sort of the private sector, really. That was my first taste of it.
And do you know, it makes perfect sense, that the way that you actually relate that as well, because if we go back to when we both first started, you're right, in the private sector, the regulation was very low. There wasn't even, you've gone way back before there was a national minimum care standards, and then obviously the Health and Social Care Act. I can go back to a point in domiciliary care where it was inspected by environmental health. They knew nothing about care, so all they were interested in was your timesheets, etc. Then the local authority was the big inspectors themselves of you.
Yeah.
There was no C-Sky or CQC or
Yeah.
welfare inspectorate. So you kind of policies and procedures within the private sector, they didn't exist. That came when the national minimum care standards came out, and we had to somehow sit there and start writing them. Whereas in local authority, you would have been working towards regulation. Well, first of all, either creating regulations or working to regulations and being inspected by government, if you like, and having to rule things out. So I'd imagine that experience of that when you went over into the private sector meant that you were able to take, the years and years of working towards regulation, working towards government initiatives, projects, etc., like that, into a world where maybe they're not as clued up or experienced with it.
You hit the nail on the head, really. I think it was exactly that, really. I had 20 odd years local authority experience, both operational, strategic, policy. And the first provider I worked for obviously snapped me up, and that's how it worked, really. And then I had several operational and then quality roles within that. So first of all, I was a learning disability practice development lead, and that was just literally embedding good practice right across the organisation. Then when sort of the restructures and the need arised, I did a regional operations manager for a while, so I kept my hand in supporting the services to be regulatory compliant, and then I naturally sort of moved to a head of quality role for it was the north of England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland at the time. So that was quite a big role. And I do need to mention my family, really, which you might touch on to, really. You might come to, because I think without that support network, particularly when you're away from home a lot, it can be difficult. I've been married 28 years next month, and I think my wife's also played a big part in where I've got to today.
When you mentioned about your daughter, your wife, your working, etc., like that, how the makeup of your family, because I understand completely the hard work. When you say hard work, for most people, they would turn around and say, oh, you must work long hours. It's actually the stress, the anxiety, the motivating other people, everything that goes with that leadership style is not sort of like, it's difficult to write down, because one day leads to the next day leads to a new problem. Because I have a similar thing with my wife. I can turn around and say absolute rock and support, but we raised her kids, and those kids really got raised within the business world, because my wife works with me in creating the businesses, and I'm a loose cannon. I'll just go off and create something new over here and something new over there. And sometimes I sort of like look back and go, how the hell did she stick around? Because I was gone. I was in hotel rooms, literally night after night after night.
Very similar, really. I mean, what I've not mentioned yet is, I think at 18, I also joined the police as a special constable. So I'd 22 years service as that, and I worked my way up to the equivalent of the chief constable for volunteers in Cleveland and Durham. But sadly, I had to give that up due to, as I progressed in my social care career, I just couldn't give the time that sort of needed, really. Yeah, so I was the chief officer of first of all Cleveland, and then I moved to Durham. And again, that certainly helped my development, because I was having meetings with chief constables who they saw something in me, leadership weekends. But just to go back to your point around my wife, from the time, certainly as I left my local authority and started to travel to Sunderland, which is like an hour away. So I might be leaving home at 7 a.m, not getting back until 6:30, 7 at night. So that commitment from my wife, and again, it's what you missed. And as I mentioned earlier, my 23-year-old daughter has got a learning disability, autism. At 6 months, she had a really serious operation on her heart. So we've had all those challenges. I mean, my wife she works in social care as well. She did work 5 days a week when we met, and that's slowly gone down to 2. But she works equally, if not harder than me, managing the family, supporting Ellie with all of her appointments and activities. So it's absolutely a partnership approach, really, and keeping that communication and the laughs and the love, that's got to be there, really. I mean, certainly for one of the private providers, when I had more of an international role in terms of England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, I was working 6 days a week.
Yeah.
I'd be traveling somewhere on a Sunday to hit the ground running, bang on at 9 o'clock on a Monday. And I do wonder whether or not with some young people today, I mean, my parents were very values driven. I had a paper out morning, night, and Sunday. Like, my dad was quite well off. He worked for an oil company, but I still got a low amount of pocket money, get out there and work. So I think it was £1 a week at the time, and then get a paper round, and that topped it up. And I think that was less than £5 a week at the time. So that strong work ethic, I think, right from an early doors helps. And I don't know whether or not that's taught anymore, or whether some of the values there.
It is, and also it is. It's a difficult one to challenge as well, because I don't want to label or put a stigma on all young people. But obviously, within my role, I employ a lot of people. We're recruiting all the time. It'll be the same within your.
Yeah.
So you can spot patterns, and you can spot characters. And first of all, I'm seeing a lot less young people apply for jobs in care. So something's steering them away from that.
Yeah.
And if I think back to that time, I mean, I started when I was 17, so I never chose to go down a college route or anything like that. It was an opportunity to go into. So we're missing out on that. But then also the work ethic. I think there is the strong values, I think, that we had from our parents, rightly or wrongly. I'm not here to sort of like label which is the best. Was very much you worked. You know, you schooled, you worked. And you worked hard, and you showed loyalty and commitment, and you were law-abiding. That they were the critical things. My dad's motto in life to me, and I remember him saying it so many times, was impossibilities I do at once, miracles take a little bit longer. In other words, there's nothing that you can't overcome. And I think from that, it ingrained into us from a very young age. And when we're talking young age, yes, you're talking 9, 10 years old. It's time to start doing things. It sort of like entrenched you into going on to achieve something, working hard, knowing it wasn't just handed to you or given to you. Every penny that you earned it through graft. And I think I don't see that in the younger generation. And I don't know whether it's because life is easier now. Now, I'm not saying it's easier in terms of mental health, stress, etc. But if put it this way, if we got a chip shop dinner, that was like the greatest night of the year. That's how little that happened. I look at families now, and including mine, it can be fast food 2 or 3 nights a week. You know, it can be, if they want something from the shop, they just go and get it, or someone gets it for them. Whereas we were very much, it's either your birthday or your Christmas. Otherwise, no. And if you did get bought something, you best look after it. So I think it's easy for us as a generation to turn around and say privilege, but I fear now that the work ethic is disappearing. It's becoming much more work-life balanced orientated, but work-life balanced orientated into life's about having fun and enjoyment and everything like that, which is fine, but you can't then keep taking handouts all your life for somebody else to support that, because the only way you're going to earn money is to work.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm old enough to remember halfpennies, and I can remember my dad giving me 20 pence to go to the shop for like a mix-up, as in you'd go and pick the penny sweets, and like that was a real treat. You do that like once a week. I think now, and I'm guilty of this with my kids. I've got 2 daughters. One's got 2 horses, and I lend her money all the time to like buy new mobile phones, or I'll give her a loan towards a horse, really. And like, although my dad had the money, he wouldn't have necessarily done that, really. Whereas now, I think there's so much sort of disposable income that I'm possibly not doing my kids any favours.
I will sit here and say my 2 pence worth is to where I think it's going a bit wrong as the grumpy old man or the grumpy old dad.
Yeah.
But in fairness, you know, I'm not going to say my kids have had the silver spoon, but they've certainly never wanted for anything.
Yeah.
And they've certainly never been put into any, what I would class as risk situations. So you mentioned about a paper run. Nowadays, you'd have parents that would be very concerned about, well, what's the route that you're doing? Who lives at what door?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want you out at that time in the morning. But we were going out at 4 o'clock in the morning before we went to school to drop the milk at front doors.
Yeah.
It was like, there's so much more caution around things that we're not actually taking as many risks in life now, or we're not allowing our children to do. And then at the same token, to alleviate that, if my daughter, who is now turning 17 very soon, turned around and said, Dad, I'm just going to my friend's house, can I have some money? If I gave her a £20 note, she'd sort of like look at me as if to go, is there another one following this? And you think, we were literally giving, there's your 50 pence or your pound or your halfpenny or your penny, wherever it may be. And that was it. It spent it and it was done. That was for your bus fare as well. So it is different times. I get it. It's completely different times, but they are the future. We are not. And I'm just concerned that we're going to see a lot less focus on you have to work to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether you're familiar with this. I like to say in the future depends on what we do today. And that's what I sort of, you've got to make that impact today. It's no good thinking, oh, I'll get around with it tomorrow. And I think that sort of, that mantra guided me through what I do really. So the future depends on what we do today. I try to live every day to the maximum. And I do think we do need to get work-life balance right, which is why I've got some volunteering opportunities. And we need to be careful that we don't just live to work, and particularly being males of a certain age, you want to be careful that you don't get in your 60s and then you have a significant health condition. So I do think there is something about getting that balance right. And certainly at National Care Group, we're very big on colleague well-being, whether that be sort of mental health, etc., physical well-being, emotional support, menopause. We're sort of very big on that too, really. So we do try and support our colleagues from a health and well-being point of view, because it is stressful working in sort of social care.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great initiative to pick up. I mean, it's one of the things that I've certainly advocated over the years is the mental health side of actually working in social care, because whether we like it or not, there's complexities in that work, there's behavioural elements in that work, there's emotional strains of sports. I mean, realistically speaking, I was 17 years old when I seen my first dead body. That was an elderly lady. No one coached me or prepared me for that. I was expected to come into the room and assist, kind of like going, yes, but the actual that those days was throw them into the deep end and see if they can swim. That's a huge trauma for someone at that moment in time, and they have to have the opportunity to discuss it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I think more and more has occurred. I think certainly from COVID. I know there's been a lot of things around schooling, a lot of things around people where they were secluded or isolated to the house. But what we also have to recognise is the world of care had to step up even more and didn't get that same break that the rest of the world got. They didn't even get a week off. And then when the world came back, they were just expected to continue as normal. So they've had to deal with so much. The world of social care is physically tired. They're regulated to the hilt. There's always these different things that get put on them and put on them. Most of the stories that come out seem to be negative instead of positive. That all social care is often seen as the villain to the angel of the NHS, when actually in many occasions it should be flipped around. I just think from that perspective, companies do need to look at this and go, if our retention rates of staff is poor, or our sickness rates for staff is poor, then we're not doing enough for our workforce to actually make sure they're supported and helped. And supporting them isn't sticking them, as much as I'm shooting myself in the foot again. It's not sticking them on another training course. It's actually putting something in there that can help the day to day.
I mean, we're really fortunate at National Care Group to have a very forward-thinking Chief People Officer, Claire. She's done lots of work, as have the rest of the exec, but Claire sort of led on it around ensuring that colleague wellbeing initiatives are in place. We do tea and chats. The exec team visits services for things like long service award, outstanding achievement awards, but we've got a range of health benefits. I mean, when I go back to the COVID pandemic, the social care sector was forgotten about by the government, really. Let's clap for carers. That was very much an NHS thing initially, really, but we very much tried to still we did welfare packs that we sent out to colleagues during the pandemic, but we know how poorly some of our social care colleagues were during the pandemic, and some of them lived in the services to protect people. I think the government have got very short memories, really, and that wasn't that sort of long ago, really. But we want to get the colleague wellbeing absolutely right, as we do for the people we support, really. But that is something that we do look at regularly, sort of on a continuous basis, really, about getting that right.
Absolutely. Okay, Mike, it would be very amiss of me to not actually talk to you about regulations based on the position that you're in. I think there'll be a lot of people listening to this, but your take on what you sort of like see the current pressures that we're experiencing social care from government and from regulators, and how you think that's impacting business.
We work with 3 regulators at National Care Group, as I mentioned earlier, the Care Quality Commission, which is in England, Care Inspectorate Wales, which is obviously Wales, and Ofsted, who oversee a specialist college that we've got, and they all operate very differently. Your listeners might not be aware, but Care Inspectorate Wales inspect services, and there's no cost to care providers for that. That is just something that the government does, whereas within England, you've got care providers who pay a significant fee for CQC to inspect their services. The regulator in England has gone through significant change over recent years. They've sort of changed their inspection methodology. There's been changes at chief inspector level, etc. It's been an awful lot for care providers, registered managers to get their head round. I think CQC have gone through a significant period of change internally, both at board level, chief inspector level, inspector level in there. So they've had a large turnover. I'm fortunate to be part of a quality directors network that's got over 100 members in it, and so we are very strong together. And some of us have been working with Care Quality Commission to give them feedback and support them to review their regulatory approach. So I think they've done like a full circle really, and they are coming out the other side now. There's a new chief inspector of adult social care starting in September. So we are positive. It's been extremely stressful for care providers, but I do think CQC are listening. We've got engagement with them on a regular basis where, as I said, certainly at the minute, I'm meeting with their director of provider engagement on a fortnightly basis. We're doing face-to-face sessions. So I think they've done that sort of full circle, really. They have had limited inspections, but that is now improving, and they've recognised that themselves. So there could be some care homes out there that haven't been inspected since 2016, 17, 18, which isn't good enough, really. If I've got a loved one in those services, you might be looking at a rating for an older person thinking, right, I'll put me nan or gran, needs to go into care, looked at the care home, oh, it's good, that's fine. But when you look closer, they haven't been inspected for several years, which doesn't give you that reassurance, because just because they were good then doesn't mean that they're still good now, really. So it's been a turbulent time, and we've done lots of training internally with support colleagues, managers, senior managers around all the regulatory approaches and ensuring that we're getting it right for people we support, really. But there's been a commitment there, and CQC are just changing the number of quality statements now. So they reduced the number of quality statements. I'm not going to say down to how many, because I don't know yet. That's still being looked at, really. But yeah, so it's having the skills, the infrastructure, and it is easier for larger care providers who've got training teams, got big operational teams, buy in training, get that training right, than it might be for your mum and pop small care home who are trying to grapple regulatory changes while supporting colleagues and the people we support. So it is slightly easier for us as a larger care provider.
And how did that coincide? I mean, I spoke to a lot of care businesses very much around about the February, March time, just when the budget was being announced. In terms of the employers' national insurance rise, in terms of the tax allowance, I mean, it affected a lot of businesses, and a lot of care business, social care businesses, very concerned that the margins were already very tight, that it may affect quality.
The vast majority of our funding comes from local authorities. We're not generally a private fee paying people where we can say, right, we're going to charge you £30 an hour, take it or leave it. This is the Rolls-Royce service. So we've got a very astute chief commercial officer who on an annual basis has those discussions with local authorities to try and get fee increases. But quite often, as you know, we've got local authorities who are facing significant financial challenges. So he has that battle of trying to get that percentage fee increase, and sometimes it's not enough to match what you've just said around we want to pay above the minimum wage, you've got national insurance contributions, everything you've just said. We've got some local authorities who've just point blankly said, no, this is what you're getting, we can't afford it, so there you go. So as a national care provider, we've had to take that hit, which is difficult when you are trying to improve quality. It's not impacting on quality, but if you think about your mum and pop small care home, some of them have gone out of business. Lots of them have gone out of business because the local authorities aren't paying for the fee increase, for the increased national insurance, etc., and they've sort of folded. But we've had to cut our cloth accordingly because we've got to pay colleagues at least the minimum wage, ideally above, and national insurance has gone up, etc. So we've had to adapt and overcome, really, but we're very supportive as an exec team, and our owners are fantastic, and we've had to sort of take that on the chin, where whilst continuing to have those difficult conversations with local authorities.
Yeah, I mean, a good case point to that is somebody that I was dealing with. When you looked at their bottom line, if you like, because of all the rises, because it's not just rises that have been imposed on you from your payroll systems, etc., like that, but also all your suppliers have put prices up.
Everything's gone up. Yeah.
So everything's gone up. They looked at it, and roughly their bottom line was increased by 10%. So whatever they earned the previous year, if they replicate that this year, it'd be 10% less. So in terms of profit. Now, when they actually looked at it, their bottom line's gone up by 10%. Local authority came in with a 2% pay rise and increase.
Oh, yeah.
But they've got to find 8%. Now, the problem is that they actually only made 10% overall profit last year.
Yeah.
That's now down to 2% if the figures remain the same. So it's a big worry, because if their occupancy levels drop in any way form, and local authority are not only just giving the 2%, but they're also trying to cut down on it, sending people into full-time care. So your occupancy naturally drops. So you go on the losing scale very, very quickly, and they just can't afford it. And like you said, the smaller ones haven't got a supporting sister company or sister site that's doing well that will support it through bad times. They're singular, they're on their own, they're out the game.
I think you've explained it really well there. I mean, there are some journalists out there who see our national care groups one of the top 20 biggest care providers in the country, but they don't understand exactly what you've just said there around actually the majority of their money comes from local authorities who are paying below what we sort of need, really. So we are taking it on the chin. But yeah, I mean, there are private care providers out there who, I don't know, they've got older person services in Mayfair. They look like hotels. They're absolutely like that, but it's private fee-paying people who is the core of their business. That's not the core of our business. We're also working with housing providers, landlords, who are also feeling the pinch, and they're trying to cut their cloth accordingly, and we're trying to keep the quality up there and not compromise on safety, really. So we do, as I mentioned before, we are taking some of it on the chin, and it is difficult at the minute. I can't deny that.
No, absolutely. But I also think what I'm trying to do is bring a little bit of, rather than doom and gloom. There's a lot of things to be doom and gloom about. There's no doubt about it. But I think with aged lived experience, what I'm trying to say to people is this isn't the first time we've been here.
Oh no, no.
Yeah. So
it's cyclical, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. It is a cycle. And the good times will come again. There will be moments where, the country becomes affluent again, there's money coming into the economy, and there is someone in government who has a full push towards improving social care services in some way, shape, or form. So it will happen. It's just that a lot of this has come off the back of COVID, when people are really tired, and it's like, oh, here we go again, we've got these pressures. But they're being felt everywhere. And it's not just social care businesses, it's every business. But as a country, to me, we've just got to sort of like continue to be really good at what we are at, continue to deliver that service, and make sure that we are almost, it's in a way you're sort of like shedding a bit of the fat. So there's some luxury things that you may have had that no longer are available to you, but make sure the core of your business still continues to do. So you're there when the sun starts shining again.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing for us is effective leadership at all levels. And as
Absolutely.
you said, we need to remain person-centered for the people we support, ensure good outcomes. The registered managers in those services need to be visible, present, sort of walking the floor, how I describe it really, interacting with people we support, colleagues, making sure that everything's right. And then I sometimes see it's a bit like a graceful swan, really, and nice and delicate on top, but we're padding like mad underneath, really, which is absolutely fine. And that's what we're there for. Leadership teams are there to sort of take the pressure off, and it's not all doom and gloom, but it's ensuring that we're supporting people to live their best lives ever. And as you said, it'll do a full circle eventually. We've been around it in local authorities cuts in the 90s, the turn of the century, and so we've been here before, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. People turn around and say inflation's at such amount or interest rates are at such amount. I'm going, just have a look back 20 years ago. But yeah, we will get there. Okay. So in terms of the future now, what is there any bigger plans ahead? Is National Care Group got big ambitions going forward? Is it much the same, or is what's in the pipeline?
Yeah, we do continue to grow when the right acquisition comes across and sort of meets our values, our ethos. So National Care Group is continuing to grow with the right sort of infrastructure. I mean, we've got a really strong exec team, regional directors, regional operations managers, and some good registered managers. So I want to absolutely see that through. We're still on a journey. Our compliance is now up to just over 92%, which is in a difficult regulatory world, that is sort of an achievement, really. So I think getting that work-life balance maybe a little bit better, and like I do volunteering work outside as well, really. So I think I'm very happy where I am with the leadership team that we've got and the owners that we've got. I don't know, at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, will I look to take something maybe a little bit less stressful so I can spend a bit more time with my family? Quite possibly, really. And I've got no qualms about taking a less paid menial job, really, as long as I need to stay active. I think until even when I'm semi-retired, I'll need to do some form of active role. I don't think I can ever put my feet up and do nothing. I don't think it's in my genes, really.
No, I listening to you, Mike, that's a definite. It's not in your genes. You'll either be out walking the beat again, or you'll be advising consulting companies. I've no doubt. But I mean, in terms of just for a moment, no, what I'm going to ask you to do is look back to that. We'll call him a boy who walked into social care. Look at all your achievements now, the companies that you've worked for, the local authorities that you've worked for, and the position you find yourself in now. Do you sit back and think to yourself, do you know what, no matter what, I've made a difference?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when I look back, sometimes I do have to pinch myself to get where I've got, but that is that hard work. But like even now, when I go into services, I like to think I make a difference with the registered manager and people we support. So if something needs doing and it can be a quick fix, or I've got some influence in sort of helping it happen. I mean, one of the initiatives that we're doing at National Care Group at the minute is to set up a Quality Together forum, which will be chaired and co-chaired by people with lived experience, and that will feed into sort of the exec team. We're going to set up a national family forum, so those bits will hopefully be a legacy long after I've sort of gone. And we have quality checkers who inspect services similar to what CQC and the other regulators do, really. So it's setting up that infrastructure that will make a difference sort of long after I've gone, really. And that's how it should be, really. I'd like to think my role's important, but I can easily be replaced. I want to set up systems and processes that make a difference, so that, God forbid, if I wasn't well or something happened, that systems, infrastructure, processes is there, and it's adding value for sort of people we support. And I've tried to do that regardless of whether I was a support colleague or a team leader or a manager or a more senior manager. I've tried to do that at every juncture that I've got. I've always tried to leave a bit of a legacy. It's not about me. I want to be like a shadow in the background, but and I've never really been one for like jazz hands, high fives, really. But it's about celebrating those sort of milestones, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mike, let's just take a look back at that person that started in care. Would you be advising them to take any form of different routes, or would you be satisfied that actually you took those opportunities when they came and you embraced them? What advice would you be giving to them?
I think we've touched on it before. Hard work. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Ask questions. Sort of network as much as you can. Try and have a smile on your face every single day, really, and that's what we say to our support colleagues. Like, I've had so much baggage over the years, whether it be dying parents, disabled kids, lots of stress, really. But the people we support do pick up on facial expressions, body language. If you go into, you'll know yourself, Paul, if you go into work like a bear with a sore head, that picks off on people. So I've always tried to treat people how I want to be treated myself, but also passionate, enthusiastic, values driven, really. I think, and regardless of whether that be social care or retail sector or whatever you do, I think if you can try and do your best every day and have that positive outcome. And I think it was similar when I worked in the police, really. I always like to treat the people I was engaging with, whether that be members of the public or somebody we were arresting. People have got their own life journey. I mean, mental health is such a big part now of everyday life. I mean, I'm quite passionate around supporting the homeless and supporting people with mental health issues, really. I think it was almost an enigma back in the day, wasn't it? Around if to admit, actually, I'm stressed, I'm struggling. I've been quite forward thinking, quite open about sharing that with sort of managers where I have struggled with sort of stress, anxiety. I've got coaching, I've sought that. So I would say don't be, I think particularly men, because we know that suicide rates for men are a lot higher than they are sort of ladies, and that's not taken away from anybody, really. But we do know maybe females, ladies are better at expressing when something's not right, whereas men might bottle it up, particularly if it's issues around finance, etc. They might worry around that. So don't be afraid to reach out to either colleagues, self-help groups, podcasts. There's ways to now get that there, and I think try and get that work-life balance as well. I mean, I run, I volunteer, so it's get that infrastructure right so that you can offload, you can speak to people, don't bottle it up.
I could not have sort of like said that any better myself in terms of, and I don't know whether it's actually more highlighted being a northern thing because we're both northerners, if you like.
Yeah,
we were brought up with the tough love type attitude and the mentality of sort of like, yes, you went to work, you were disciplined. Every neighbour was your auntie, and they were allowed to beat you around the back of the head if they wanted to. Well. So it's sort of like that attitude, and also a man was a man.
Yeah.
And I could not. It may have been different in your house, but I couldn't imagine of ever going into my dad and saying to him, "Dad, I think I'm experiencing mental health problems." Because I think I'll show you mental health. That's what
yeah, exactly. I mean, he worked for an oil company all around the world, but I think certainly times have changed, haven't they? And I think
what I'm getting at, Mike, is you've just sort of like said about stress, anxiety. They are forms of mental health. I've suffered from it myself. So at times you want to rip the mask off and just say, "Listen, I'm not feeling great at this moment in time." And there's not. I think we're only just now starting to realize it's okay to actually to speak to someone about it.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly within this, I don't mind admitting, even within the 6 years that I've been with National Care Group, sometimes when the pressure's been on from a regulatory point of view, and you think, oh my God, everyone's looking at you, and it's my fault, and it's yourself doubt. Really, I've sought out. Thankfully, I've had a really supportive CEO, and I've been able to explain, look, I'm not in a great place. What can we do to help? And I did seek some additional coaching at one point that I do still go back to. I tried various things around sort of psychotherapy, various other bits to try and get my work-life balance, mental health right. But I mean, I can think of within the last 6 years where I've been in a board meeting and I've been accused of being aggressive and shouting, and that's because I've not been right sort of mentally, really. So it is about trying to be disciplined with yourself. I mean, I'm big into park run. I'm not a very fast runner, but I'm big into park run, and I do custody visits as well to volunteer. So it's about thinking how you've got those outlets to offload your stress. And I've got a tool on my phone where every day where I sort of log my mood and whether I've done exercise, whether I've drank alcohol, and what's worked well and not worked well. So I think it's about finding mechanisms yourself to map. And I can go back on that app. I've been doing it nearly a year now, and I think, oh, I've got a red angry face there, and what was it? And I can go back and think, oh yeah, we had the regulator in that day, or I've had a different conversation, it's not gone well, or oh, I didn't speak to that person very well, and I've reflected on it. So I think it's about coming up with a range of mechanisms to reflect on yourself and how could I have done something differently, and where you need to seek help, support, training, guidance, really.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to do it. It's
absolutely not
the in thing, you know. And when I say it's the in thing, it means it's kind of cool.
I actually think it shows a sign of strength, not weakness. So if something's not right, and I don't know, you need to reach out, whether that just be a conversation or whether you need more professional help, I actually think that shows strength, not weakness, because and I think regardless of whether you're a support colleague, I think it's a lot harder now in social care than maybe when you and I started, for the reasons we mentioned earlier around rules, regulations. We've got less funding now than what we had previously, so we might have less support colleagues on the front line. So I think regardless of what level you're at or what path you're going to, we all need that support, that infrastructure, that release mechanism. Yeah, that's really important.
You know, I've loved the way how this conversation has ended with that point, because it is so blooming important to me, because you know, like I said, I'm not ashamed to turn around and say I've suffered, I've felt down, I've felt low, I've not wanted to get out of the bed, and I'm somebody that is literally very much what I would class as a growth specialist. I will throw myself into every challenge that I can possibly find.
Yeah.
But when them negative thoughts start to loom and you start to self-doubt yourself and you start to worry about your own identity, it's amazing how those chemicals in the brain can start making you think, why am I here? What's the point in all of this? And you are going to go on a self-destruct mechanism and destroy everything in your path because it's bringing you down so much. So before it gets to that stage, working out what those signals are and things like that app that you discussed, that you can use for that, or journaling. You know, there's nothing, you're not keeping
I've done that.
you're just journaling, reflecting, just try and highlight it, and then have that network of people around you that actually non-judgmentally you can reach out to and talk. And I think the more that men start to talk about it, the bigger that network will grow and the less that stigma will be there. So ultimately, I would be constantly saying to people, screw it. Yeah, I'm Paul Blaine. I'm not an alcoholic, but geez, I've gone through some stressful moments in decision making in my life. That the hardest part of that is any decision I make will naturally impact the lives of others. That's what happens when you're sort of like running companies, etc. So that comes with a different level of stress. So it's great that we talked about that. The last word, the lunch list. If you had the options to share a lunch with any three individuals, past or present, who would you choose, and what would you hope to learn from each of them?
Yeah, so they probably are quite generic people that I'm going to say here, and they are really well known. So I've gone for Barack Obama. Speaks well, knowledgeable, clearly he's had to fight his own fight, but also such a influential knowledge around global politics. I mean, when I compare him to the current US president, I'm not going to get into the politics, but I do think he was really inspirational and somebody who I did respect, really. So I think it would be great to have dinner with him or a glass of whiskey with him and learn what he's gone through, really. Then I'm quite into me gadgets and technology, and so is National Care Group. We've got electronic care plans now, EMA, and a governance system. I'd like to I'd like to have dinner with Steve Jobs, really, just around his vision, insight, innovation, technology. And when you think how humble he is with how much money that he's got, I mean, I'm certainly not nowhere near financially in his ball camp, really, but like I'm still very down to earth now with what I've got. I'd probably give my last penny away, really, like either to the kids more than likely. But so that was one, and then quite a common one again, I'm guessing. But Nelson Mandela, a symbol of resilience and forgiveness, really. When you consider what he went through in his lifestyle, with his lifetime, being in jail, everything else, and was still very humble even towards the end around sort of forgiveness. Really, I think that resilience and the forgiveness bit is something that does resonate with me. So I think all three of them, but I mean there are numerous females as well who I could sort of mention. So, yeah. But yeah, I think that was more particularly around their sort of roles and their influence, really.
All three of those are masters of what I would say change culture is.
Oh God, yeah.
Look at them. Every one of them came in and changed. You know, Barack Obama, the first black president of America. You know,
yeah.
60 years on from when you couldn't even sit on the bus or go into bars.
Yeah.
So miraculous what he done, and was such a great communicator that he was able to draw in not just national crowds but international crowds. Probably one of the best speakers I've ever seen behind a mic. And if you're ever going to look at somebody and you're fancying standing up in a meeting, just look at him and just look at the body language he uses. Look at the pause moments that he allows people.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
he's brilliant at it. When you actually talk about Steve Jobs, I'm with you. I definitely have him simply because he changed the world.
And that positive risk taking as well, isn't it? That he wasn't afraid to sort of have a gamble, go with it, test it. But then, like, he's done so much as well for charities and giving his wealth away, and that'd just be such an interesting journey, wouldn't it? Really, I mean, like now we're just so reliant on iPhones, but that's had such an impact on health as well, hasn't it? Like
every app is because of that,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly.
And when you see the story of how he put out funds to people so he never developed the apps. He put out a fund and said, if you want to develop an app and sit it on a platform, you can apply for this fund. And everybody that was new to tech was saying, oh, we could try and build this new app that sits in the iPhone. So they were given money from Apple to do this. But what they didn't realize is they were building the future of the iPhone, because it's all app related. And they were the inventors. Genius, some of the things that he's done.
Oh, absolutely.
And Nelson Mandela. But the thing I love about Steve Jobs, and this is a bit that he doesn't get enough credit for, it was the people he put around him. So he was the orchestrator. He couldn't actually play any of the musical instruments. The orchestrator that got that orchestra to make the sound that made to create the iPhone, because each individual person that worked in that development and design company didn't believe it was possible. But it takes someone to stand there and go, it is possible and we will do it, but I need you to play this note and you to play that note. And from a leadership perspective, not actually given the credit he deserves, because he was one of the greatest leaders that you'll find.
Yeah, I think there's a key learning point there, isn't there, that you've made around trying to surround yourself with good people. And some of the people in my team are more knowledgeable in certain areas than me. And I've got a data analyst who crunches a wide range of data and heads of quality, and they've each got their own set of skills, or we've all each got our own set of skills, really. But I've got no shame in admitting they can do some things a lot better than me. But that's how it should be, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then Nelson Mandela, your last pick. Yeah, well, I think history will live with that man, if he over his heads forever, because you're right. How the heck could you be treated the way he was and then come out and not just unite a nation, but you had a lot of black people at the time that were thinking, great, we've got a president now, so we can take control. And you got a lot of white people that are saying, why have we got a black president? He's a terrorist. So he had to sort of like convince the black people that he wasn't about to give them full control, and the white people that they were going to integrate and find a way forward. I love those three. They were a great three. Mike, I've absolutely loved this. And I'll tell you why I've loved it, because most people that you speak to with titles of chief operating officer or chief officer, risk officer, they tend to not be great communicators, but you are. And you were able to sort of like really explain yourself and the job that you do, and down to earth. And I love the mere fact that all those driving values that you had at the beginning are still there years later in making that difference. So, yeah, I think a lot of people are going to get a lot from this and actually realize, and I'm going to say this to the audience now, if you're young and you're coming into social care, I'm sure Mike can say the same. I came into it with nothing. And it was still the one industry that allowed you to get to the top of it and be given opportunity. And all you had to do, in the nicest possible sense, was give a shit.
Yeah, yeah, very well put. Yeah.
So, and I believe the industry is still like that. I believe
Yeah.
it's still one of the only industries that you could walk into this at 18 years old, and there is a career pathway right through it to the top. And there's branches off into training, there's branches off into other industries. There's lots of tech involved within it now.
Yeah.
Sales, it's got everything. It's the greatest industry that there is, and it's because the people that come into it genuinely have a passion for it. So, Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For everybody that's listened in, thank you very much. You've listened to or watched another episode of Behind the Briefcase with myself, Paul Blaine, and Mike Cleasby. Have a great week, and make sure you stay in touch and tune in to the next episode. Thank you.